I remember from that interview, you were talking about how working out, because you had admitted you were an alcoholic and you got cleaned.
Yes.
And that's huge. And how has that recovery been?
It's been amazing. I feel like when I first quit drinking, it was like my body took this sigh of relief, like, and along with that sigh of relief went all this water weight and all this baggage and all this emotion. No one is at their highest functioning when they're drinking every day, And I wasn't the type of alcoholic that, would wake up in the morning and reach for a warm bottle of vodka on the bedside. But I was the type of alcoholic that couldn't function well without a drink. Like, if I was in any kind of social situation or playing shows or doing anything, which I do every day of my life, I'm on stage. I couldn't function well without having, a cocktail or a beer or whatever. So once I cut that out of my life, I realized life is not all that dramatic. Nothing is really as big of a deal as I thought it was.
Yeah.
And, physically, like my skin got better. I lost a ton of weight. My hair started growing faster. My nails got stronger. Like everything about it was just like, my body was like, thanks for getting with the program.
Yeah.
It was about time.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about the program itself. Like, how does it help alcoholics? And the reason I ask that is, like, for example, your experience with it, because I know that there's some people that have had this problem and they've had to go numerous times before it sinks in. I
have actually not been through the program. Like, I don't go to meetings. I've actually never been to one, which I would love to, because I think it's important to have a supportive community around you, whatever you do.
Yeah.
But when I first got sober, I was on the road. I was on tour with Alice Cooper and Motley Crue, and I felt so shy, even to talk to people that I know that I'm close with, much less go to a meeting with a bunch of strangers, in a country, some random city that I've never been to. I never felt comfortable enough to share my experience with a bunch of people I didn't know. Now I think I could, but now it's been a little over 3 years, so I feel pretty solid in it. But the thing that drove me, and the thing that still drives me today to stay sober, is all the blessings that have come into my life since this happened. Not only was it, I lost weight and I looked better and I stopped fighting with my boyfriend, but I felt like God told me, now you're ready to accept these blessings that are coming into your life. And if I started drinking now and kind of throwing that back in Josh's face, and everyone's believing me, and all the, the supporters over the years on social media that have said, like, you getting sober give me the courage to get sober, and you doing this shows me that I can do it, that if you can do it with your schedule and your craziness, that anybody can do it. I feel like I would be throwing it all back in everybody's face, and I can't do that. I can't do it at this point.
So that's like your support system right there.
It's
the fans that are around you.
Yeah, and I had two great people around that I could ask, which are Alice and Nikki Sixx.
Now, are they clean?
Yeah, Alice is sober over 30 years, and I think Nikki at least 10, if not 15 or 20.
Wow.
Yeah. And Nikki Sixx was as bad off as anybody could possibly be.
Right.
So to have both of those people there to, sort of lean on and say, like, hey, you've been through this, what did you do and what can I do, was something that most people don't get a chance to ask, to ask their hero who's been through the same thing. There were 3 of my heroes that have gotten clean and sober that I got to ask for advice were Alice Cooper, Nikki Sixx, and Zakk Wylde.
Wow.
3 legendary rock stars that I've had the opportunity to chat with and say, look, you've done this. What can I expect? What can I do? How can I make sure I stay on this path? And each one had different advice, and each one was helpful in their own way.
Yeah. So do you remember that moment? Can you take us back to that moment where you said, that's it, I'm changing my life?
Yeah. We were in New Orleans, and I had already promised to stop drinking a few times and never gotten, I love that you were just like getting me right back into this emotional place right out of the gate. I'm going to cry every this time. Okay. But Josh and I got in this, I had not drank for like 3 or 4 weeks from the last fight that we had where I said, I'm not drinking anymore. And then we were in New Orleans, and it was my first time actually being in New Orleans, like hanging out and doing stuff. And he said, hey, we're going to go out to Bourbon Street with my friends tonight. And Josh has always, throughout the entirety of my sobriety, from the very early stages until today, he's like a tough love type. He's like, look, you're on this path and I support you, but I'm not changing the way I do things at all. So I'm going to go to the bar. If you want to come, you can come. If you want to stay home by yourself, you can stay home by yourself.
Right.
I'm kind of glad in retrospect that he did that, because it threw me into the fire and showed me like, hey, you can be here and not drink.
Was he drinking or not?
He was.
He was.
Yeah,
okay.
He has continued to drink throughout.
But he didn't want you to drink.
But he didn't want me to drink, because when I would drink, I would start fights and I would get emotional and I would, overreact to stupid things like you do when you drink.
Right.
It's part of part of drinking. It heightens all your emotions and everything. So we went out but I said, hey, we're in New Orleans. I'm going to drink with you and your friends. And we went out to Bourbon Street, and of course, ended up getting in a fight. And by the end of the night, we just separated from each other. I was like, he walked off and I walked off, and there we were in another city. He's from there, but I had never been there. Like, I found my way back to the hotel, which, funny enough, was the same hotel we stayed in for Mania. So it was really full circle.
Yeah.
And then he came in at 5 o'clock in the morning and just said, look, I don't want you in my life anymore if it's going to be like this. I cannot have, like, we loved each other. We've always loved each other. But he said, if this is how it's going to be, you have to choose. And you have to choose once and for all. And this is something that had been going on with my parents, with, the band, with everybody around me for a long time. And he said, look, if this is the path that you want to go on, feel free, but I can't support you on this, and I can't be with you if this is how you're going to be. And I was crying, still half drunk. I was like, okay, that's fine. If that's what it is, nothing's more important to me than love. There's nothing, and who knows? Who knows if he really would have left me on that day and left me in New Orleans or not.
Right.
But, I wasn't willing to take that risk. It took somebody, really slamming the door and saying, this is a final ultimatum. You do it or you don't do it. And that's it. And once I stopped drinking, like, my parents called him and thanked him. The guys in the band, like, everyone knows, they're like, you look great. Like, and all of a sudden I'm sleeping through the night. I'm not in these fits of rage all the time and freaking out about stupid stuff. And I just feel so clear-headed, and the biggest mental takeaway was that not everything is that big of a deal.
Yeah. So how the heck did you do it, though? You made that decision, but what is the first thing that you did?
I started going to the gym. And making myself wake up early and go to the gym, because I thought, if I'm going to go down this path and I'm going to sacrifice something, I want it to be worth it.
Yeah.
So I sort of traded one addiction for the other, and I started getting up early and going to the gym, which, when you're drinking vodka and beer every night and eating pizza late at night and doing all this stuff, you're not getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning and working out.
Yeah.
But then when I stopped drinking, I was like, oh, I can get up at 7 easily, and I still do to this day. Like, I'll get up at 7, 6:30 or 7, I'll do my workout and then I'll start my day. And being able to do that kind of put me in that mindset as well. 'Cause, it's kind of the same principle as if you're working out a lot, you don't really want to eat as unhealthily, because you're like, oh, I just did a great workout. Why am I going to spoil it with this? Mm-hmm. So that was huge.
Yeah.